Christopher Sweet has been writing for more than the requisite 10,000 hours. He enjoys literary genres where the writer talks about himself in third person. It reminds him of growing up in Kansas, where his parents would frequently reference him as if he were absent, though he was standing between them. When not on stage reading, Chris enjoys bicycling, drinking coffee, and jotting down notes while waiting for Quinn the Eskimo to get here. Tonight, Chris will read you a story about his misspent youth. He promises something for everyone. Please welcome Christopher Sweet.
Do the adjustment, yes. Okay, so like being fitted for a suit. Hello.
How's that?
Oh, yeah. All right. Yes, this is a memoir. It's called Amor Brujo. When I ran into Celine, she was dating Stephen, a guy I had known since freshman year, when he and I lived on the same floor in Sargent Hall. Stephen was a quiet guy, tall and cadaverous, who had come to Northwestern to study astronomy. He subsidized his tuition with a job on the food line, first at Sargent Hall, and later at the Northwestern Apartments, a building on South Campus that featured apartment-style living for women. I should explain that in 1967, the women lived on South Campus, the men on North Campus. They were separated by half a mile of Sheridan Road and a century of sexual prohibition. It was the year of the big push for parietal hours, times of the evening set aside when boys could invite girls into the dorm, and not just into the common areas either, into their rooms. It was an invitation to sin. Of course, the rule stated that the door had to remain open for the entire visit. Someone objected how far open. The university administration drew the line. The door had to remain open the width of a book. There followed a sudden run in all the local restaurants on matchbooks. It was the age of public smoking. Have a real cigarette, have a Camel, and LSMFT. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. Those were the familiar mantras of the Vietnam generation. Some of us could remember the ads in which the belltop in a monkey suit would cup his hand and sing out across the lobby of some fine hotel, "Call for Philip Morris," as if when you smoked a Philip Morris cigarette, people would start phoning you at your hotel in Manhattan, or wherever you went in your head when the nicotine craving hit you and you wanted to feel like a big shot. Pall Mall even offered sexual advice to young men who were considering smoking. Greater length is only half the story. Buy Pall Mall famous cigarettes. Outstanding. And they are mild. One could walk down the hall on a Saturday night and flip the matchbooks that were sticking out of the seams of doors that were closed and locked. One could go to the robot room on the ground floor that was stocked with machines that dispensed everything from pies that looked like plastic and tasted like cough syrup, to pink meats sandwiched in white bread, to hockey pucks on a bun, and one radar range, a machine that we now know to have been an early and perhaps extremely dangerous precursor of the microwave oven. Or to the common room with its 26-inch television, to find the displaced roommates, the dateless ones, reading the paper, watching the tube, or playing cards. Suddenly, one spring day in 1970, our undergraduate education was over. We would have to find real jobs and real places to live. Some of us would have to deal with low draft numbers, which meant graduate school or Canada, for both the anti-war draft dodgers and the gung-ho, only good commie is a dead commie, pro-war draft-dodging chicken hawks. I was 4F, physically unfit to serve, jobless, and without any marketable skills, so I opted for graduate school. A month before graduation, I run into Celine on the street, just a chance thing. We talk for a minute about the future and where we're going to live in the summer. When Celine says that apartments in Evanston are way too expensive to afford one alone, an idea pops into my head, and no sooner pops in than pops out of my mouth. And I look at Celine's chest and say, why don't we get an apartment together, like a commune? You and Stephen and me and whoever. To my surprise, Celine, who hails from New York City and is way beyond cool, says, yeah, good idea. The next day, Stephen digs me up and asks if I really arrived at this idea on my own. I tell him yes. He scratches his head and smiles at me. Okay, he says. Stephen is the king of deadpan, so when he smiles, You can see that he's profoundly amused by something, and you trust that he knows what he's doing. On graduation day, I'm sitting in the common room waiting for my parents and watching television alone, except for one other guy, a guy I've never seen before. He starts talking to me about how he's in the Navy now and how he has never been sexually aroused. I'm not making this up. The guy is deeply troubled because he has never felt anything down there. Nothing, I ask? He shakes his head. It's like he wants me to be his advice columnist and tell him what to do about it. I haven't the slightest idea what to do about it. I have the opposite problem. As soon as my groin starts to move, I lose my mind. I blurt out idiocy like, I've got an idea, let's move in together. In fact, at this point in my life, I'm engaged to be married, so stealing Celine from Stephen is not on my agenda. Just as with Celine, I had popped the question to my girlfriend, Pam, as soon as it popped into my brain, which also occurred as a response to a certain movement in my groin. Did I mention I'm an idiot, or have you figured that out already? Now, Pam, my fiancée, is unwilling to move in with me. In fact, at Pam's insistence, we have never gone beyond heavy petting. To top it off, Pam lives in Indiana, and I have to drive to hell and back to see her. My friends and I take up residence at 711 Main Street, a 6-bedroom apartment above a toy store. I already know most of my housemates. Stephen and Celine you've met. There's Benny and his girlfriend Rose, who are unemployed and without a future. Alice, who has been accepted to the graduate English program at North Carolina. Catwoman, who I swear to God I never knew her name. But she has a cat she loves more than any man. Mel, who is 2 years younger than anyone else because he was in accelerated programs when he was a kid in Brooklyn, and who brings with him his future first wife, Eloise. And Andy, who sleeps in the closet when he isn't out on the street. I mean two things by this. Andy really did sleep in the walk-in hall closet when he was around, and he was into the gay street life, which included drugs and risks that were extreme, even in the era before AIDS. The last time I saw Andy, he had come home to the closet to crash. His arm was in a sling, his head was bandaged, and he was black and blue all over. I never heard Stephen and Celine fucking, although my room was next to theirs, but I could tell they did by their morning look. Down the hall from them slept Benny and Rose and Mel and Eloise, at least until Mel and Eloise couldn't take Benny and Rose any longer and moved into their own place. See, Benny and Mel had been roommates for 4 years at Sargent Hall, so they thought it would be a great idea to keep on being roommates for the summer until everyone settled down. The girls went along with it for less than a month. Catwoman led an interesting life. You could hear her fucking from all over the house. It was always a different varsity football player, and usually on a weeknight. On weekends, she went out early and came back late. She kept her door closed and almost never came out. I saw the inside of her room once when she got a phone call. The phone was next to my room, and I knocked on her door to rouse her. She wasn't in, but I peeked inside. Her bedroom was papered with cat posters. Not the cute, cuddly kind, but tigers, lions, bobcats, and panthers, the larger cats. Her own cat, Mr. Mellow, was curled on the bed. Mr. Mellow was not yellow, as you might have guessed, but splotched white, black, and tan. Alice was powerful, strong, smart, big, and successful. She was that rarity among college graduates, the highly motivated English major. We had a big living room with a bullet hole in the wall, said to have been put there by the previous tenants, friends of Catwoman. We spent very little time in the living room. Most of us had jobs. Stephen worked as a computer programmer at the university, and he often worked late hours and weekends. I worked days at the library. When I was home, I pursued my summer's goal to read that American classic, Moby Dick. One night, Stephen is working late at the university. Benny and Rose are out on the town, Andy is out whoring, and Catwoman is on a date. And only Alice and Celine and I are in the apartment. I'm sitting at the kitchen table eating on some chicken, reading and listening to FM radio. The radio is playing Defia's El Amor Brujo, or Love the Magician. Brujo can be translated as conjurer or spellcaster or warlock, male witch. The ritual fire dance is competing for my attention with the hunt for the sperm whale, when Celine, in her tight jeans and dark blouse with an oversized pointed collar, saunters in and sits down opposite me. She asks what I'm reading, and if I like it. I tell her. Then she asks if I want to sleep with her. My answer is, of course, yes, but I add that I can't sleep with her because I'm engaged. Pam doesn't have to know, she says. What about Stephen, I ask. Who's going to tell him, she asks back. Well, not me, but I can't betray Pam. Why, she asks, as if fucking is the most natural thing for us to do at this moment in my life. Because I'm in love with her. Love, she says. So you believe in love? Is that it? Yes, I do. I believe in romantic love, in the merging of two hearts. Like Plato says, the yolk and white of one egg. I go on and on. The whole conversation takes place against a spell of ritual fire that consumes everything in its path. I conclude my argument, I do believe we all have one true love in our lives, one soulmate, and when we find that person, we are complete. Celine gets up from her chair and says, you're wrong. She walks back to the living room and I turn and watch her hips move as she goes, and I am astonished at how angry she is. I'm left with my idiotic declaration of eternal values turning to ash in the flames of Faya's music. Do I believe what I said? For a moment I'm not sure, and then I feel absolute certainty. I am a rock. I am an island. For some idiotic reason, Paul Simon's lyric drowns out Faya's magic fire. I try to read, but I'm taunted by the laughter and banter between Celine and Alice in the living room. I get up and go and confront them. I walk in and sit down. Alice is grinning at me. I tell Celine I'm sorry, and I hope she'll understand that I'm a lot less experienced than I ought to be at 21. Celine tells me about her own level of experience. Her first lover was her mother's boyfriend. She was a 9th grader, and he was pushing 30. Alice leaves the room. I ask Celine if her mother found out. She says yes, and then she doesn't want to talk anymore. I ask if she loves Stephen. She says, as much as anybody. I end up in my room. The walls, floor, and ceiling are painted black, perhaps in an homage to the Rolling Stones. I ought to redecorate, but I'm not planning to be here longer than the end of summer. It's slightly creepy, but it's home for now, and I have the future to think of. But I feel quite alone in my narrow bed. Pam and I are to be married in September. I fall asleep thinking about what I want to happen. Near the end of July, we throw a party. We have to be careful about the marijuana. Celine is afraid we're under surveillance. She has noted that an old guy in a Chevy is parked in the same spot right outside the front door every morning reading the paper. He might be an undercover cop. Or maybe he lives on the block and he can't stand his wife. Nobody's sure. The party's loud. We have about 50 people over. I play the role of designated sober person. Pam can't make it to the party, something about her sister's birthday. We get a couple of scares. First, this girl Helen has a schizophrenic episode. She has been hearing voices off and on for more than a year, and the noise of the party only confuses her. The medications of the period have horrendous side effects, and she may have gone off her meds for the night. Her friends bring her back to the kitchen, where it's quieter. I hide the bag of grass inside the freezer compartment of the refrigerator, behind the stack of 99-cent frozen dinners, in case we have to call for an ambulance. I like Helen a lot. It's sad to see her trying to keep focused when her voices are after her. Her hair is black and thick, her hands are a poet's hands, long-fingered. The boy she's with doesn't understand. I don't think anyone's told him what she's going through. He tries to laugh it off, but he clearly wants to go home. Helen won't leave with him. So Stephen tells him she'll be okay and he will take her home. After Stephen and Helen leave, I get up with a group that climbs out the back window onto the fire escape. The place isn't quite up to code. And then into the apartment next door, where there's another party going on. There's a guy asleep at the kitchen table with an open pint of bourbon near his head. His woman says he's nodding out, and I'm terrified. I've never seen anyone nodding out on heroin before. But they have a great collection of blues records. And Richie, a friend of ours who later works gigs for NPR, is so blown away by the music that he makes himself welcome. The owner of the grass asks me where I put it, and for a moment I draw a total blank. Then I remember. Banquet frozen TV dinners. I climb back in our window to show him the freezer, figuring the crisis is over. I get a bottle of beer and head for the living room. I nurse it along, and I sit on the floor in the darkness and let the music swallow me whole. Then I get another beer, and when I come back, somebody is holding up the queue, searching for Eric Burden and the Animals, and I have a good conversation with a guy I hardly know. In a month, he'll leave Evanston for Woods Hole to study oceanography. A couple of months later, I'll get the news that he's drowned, pulled out to sea by the undertow. But on this night, I get to know him as the most supportive, understanding guy. He could be the brother I always wanted, or the father. Pretty soon, someone drops the needle on, we got to get out of this place, and everybody picks up a couple of bottles or runs and grabs a pan and a spoon from the kitchen, and we're beating them together and singing in chorus. This is the high water mark of the party. After the music ends, the lights come on. People start to drift away. It is now 2 a.m. The floor is covered with broken glass. I stare at the wreckage. Alice comes in with a broom and a dustpan and gets to work. I hear a scream and a scuffle in the hall. I go there and find Catwoman sobbing and shaking. Stephen tells me someone left the front door open and Mr. Mello went down the stairs and out for a walk on the wild side. Her wailing doesn't stop. A phone call brings her father from Lake Forest to our front door. He drives her away in his Mercedes. We wait up for Mr. Mello to come home. After sunrise, we make signs to post in the neighborhood. Days pass, but no word of Mr. Mello. Catwoman enters therapy and avoids eye contact by wearing dark glasses when she has to leave her room. The end of summer is near. I'm anticipating my impending wedding, which is completely in Pam's hands. Celine and Stephen have some friends over. Theo Burnside, who works on the board crew at the Northwestern Apartments, where he is also the resident stud. He's a reliable, discreet, and indefatigable sexual machine with a heart of gold. The occasion is a going-away party for Kip Doherty, who is headed for Yale the next day. It's after midnight when Kip's party breaks up. Too late to walk home. Stephen's car is in the shop, so I volunteer to drive. Stephen is in the front seat beside me, and in the back are Kip and Celine and Theo. I'm lost, so I'm looking at street signs and from time to time asking Stephen where to turn. Theo wants to be dropped off at the apartments, figuring he'll spend the night there. I haven't been listening to the conversation, though the tone of it has been friendly. We get to the apartments, and I turn around and see Theo holding up his keys to the cafeteria and looking at Celine. She murmurs something intimate, and all at once the weather changes. Theo reaches for the door handle, and Stephen asks Celine, "Have you slept with Theo?" There isn't a second's hesitation. "Yes." "Did you sleep with Kip?" "Yes." "Ben?" "Yes." "Who else?" Celine reels off a long list of names. Stephen looks straight ahead and asks her deadpan, "Is there anybody you didn't sleep with?" She says my name. Theo opens the door and Celine follows him out. Kip says, "I think I'll get out here too," and bails. I head the car back towards 711 Main Street. I can't stand the silence. I say, "It's true. I didn't sleep with her." I don't know if I wanted his congratulations or a medal, but I only made things worse. He says, "Did she ask?" I should not have told him the truth. He might have believed a lie. He loved Celine. 15 years pass. I've been divorced from Pam for quite a while. One day I meet Helen on the street. Helen is sweet and skeptical at the same time. She's on new meds. She takes me to a second-hand shop and finds a book she says is perfect for me, which she buys for 35 cents. I still have it, Markings by Dag Hammarskjöld, the Swedish writer and diplomat, Secretary General of the UN, killed in the Congo in 1961. I open the book and read the first poem. It seems to be addressed to me. I am being driven forward into an unknown land. The pass grows steeper, the air colder and sharper. A wind from my unknown goal stirs the strings of expectation. Still the question, shall I ever get there? There where life resounds, a clear, pure note in the silence. We never talk about true love, magic fire, or soulmates. I live with Helen as long as I can bear loving her. She is schizophrenic, and when she goes off her meds and talks to the walls, I want to die. I'm just not strong enough. One day, deep in pain, I call it quits. No secrets are spilled, no betrayals are unveiled, and no spells are broken. We trade only our disappointment, which is the well-worn currency of adulthood. And we are both adults. Thank you.